Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're unlocking a secret language that is spoken all around us, literally every single day, yet most people never even realize it's there. We're talking about decoding the complex, structural language of the natural world. If you've ever walked through a forest and wondered how on earth a towering oak tree relates to a delicate little vine, or why leaves take on such radically different shapes, well, you are definitely in the right place. Today's explainer is going to give you the exact visual vocabulary you need to read nature like a book.
Okay, let's jump right in and anchor our journey in some truly foundational science. We're looking at the authoritative work of the late Donald R. Kaplan, which was beautifully edited by Chelsea D. Specht. Kaplan was a visionary. He looked at plants with this strictly analytical, almost architectural eye. He really wanted to understand the fundamental structural commonalities that tie the entire plant kingdom together. And his work perfectly illustrates a core biological truth. A plant's physical form directly dictates its survival. A broad leaf catches more sun. A deep root finds more water. Form, quite literally, is function.
So here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the language of plants, move into decoding leaf structures, explore the anatomy of flowers, look at plants in extreme environments, and finish up with an interdisciplinary bridge. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the language of plants, and how we decode the structure of nature.
The crucial thing to understand here is that morphology, which you'll also hear called organography, is essentially the macroscopic anatomy of a plant. The word itself comes from the Greek morphos, meaning shape, and logos, meaning discourse. If you think about it in terms of the animal kingdom, morphology is basically the equivalent of studying animal anatomy with the unaided eye. We're looking at the major macroscopic organs, like the leaf, the stem, and the root, rather than zooming all the way in on that microscopic cellular level.
Now this is where it gets really fascinating. Kaplan's work reveals this major concept called the ground plan. It turns out that all vascular plants, the tracheophytes, appear to be built on the exact same fundamental organizational theme. Think about that for a second. Every plant you see, whether it's a tiny little herb pushing through the sidewalk or a massive redwood tree, is just a structural variant built upon one basic ground plan. Nature simply tweaks the parameters of growth and development to produce all the vast diversity we see out there today.
Moving right along to Section 2, decoding leaf structures, where we learn to read the history and environment of the plant. Leaf edges, or margins as they're properly called, give us these immediate, incredibly helpful visual clues for plant identification, and they're remarkably consistent within a species. You've got quite a variety to look out for. You can have an entire edge, which is perfectly even and smooth, no toothing at all. Or you might spot a ciliate margin, which is fringed with these fine little hairs. Then you get into the tooth varieties. A crenate edge is wavy with rounded teeth, while the dentate margin features sharper, asymmetrical teeth pointing outward. Just by glancing at the edge of a leaf, you are already reading its unique morphological signature.
And when we look at compound leaves, the ones divided into multiple distinct leaflets, the math actually matters. An imparipinnate leaf has an odd number of leaflets. Why? Because it finishes with a single terminal leaflet right at the very end of the axis. On the flip side, a parapinnate leaf has an even number of leaflets and completely lacks that terminal one at the tip.
We see this exact same precision when describing the overall shape of the leaf blade. An ovate leaf is egg-shaped. It's got a tapering point, and its widest portion is situated near the stem, or petiole. But an ovate leaf, it completely flips that script. It reverses the ovate shape into more of a teardrop, putting the widest part near the tip and the tapering end right down at the stem attachment. It might seem like a subtle shift in geometry, but in morphology, geometry is everything.
All right, into Section 3, Anatomy of Flowers, categorizing the reproductive organs.
If you break it down, a typical flower is built in these concentric rings, which we call whorls. The outer rings, that's your calyx and corolla, act as the protective and attractive packaging, using sepals and petals. But deep inside, that's where you find the reproductive engines. The androecium holds all the male parts, and the gynoecium houses the female parts. It's an amazingly efficient, perfectly nested blueprint. Now, internally, this whole beautiful structure is supported by highly specialized tissues that act almost like a city's infrastructure. Meristematic tissues are your active construction zones, driving all the new growth. Permanent tissues step in to provide the physical scaffolding. Then you have the vascular tissues, the xylem and phloem, which are essentially the city's plumbing system, pumping water and nutrients exactly where they need to go.
And finally, epidermal tissues act as the outer walls, carefully controlling gas exchange with the outside environment.
Which brings us to Section 4, Plants in Extreme Environments. This is where form meets extreme function.
It's a pretty fascinating question, isn't it? I mean, we're all taught from a very young age that plants absolutely need dirt to survive. Roots go in the ground, shoots go up in the air. Simple, right? But what happens when a plant abandons the ground entirely?
Well, the answer lies with epiphytes. These are incredibly resilient plants that actually live upon other plants. Take species like the Tillandsia, which you probably know as Spanish moss. They live way up high in the aerial branches of forest trees, completely bypassing the ground. Because they don't have access to soil nutrients or groundwater, they have to radically modify their morphology. They use these highly specialized epidermal scales that cover their shoot surfaces to literally scavenge water and minerals straight out of the human air. Their form is entirely adapted to their sky-high function.
And if you think that's wild, parasitic plants are even more extreme. Take the Arstuthobium, or dwarf mistletoe, which grows on spruce trees. It doesn't just rest on the host like an epiphyte. Its vegetative phase consists of these simplified strands that actually permeate the body of the host tree to steal its water and nutrients. It almost entirely abandons normal external structures until it's time to reproduce. When that moment comes, it erupts flowering shoots right through the host's bark to spread its seeds. It is ultimate proof that when survival is on the line, that basic ground plan we talked about earlier can be radically, ruthlessly modified.
Let's wrap things up with Section 5, an interdisciplinary bridge, connecting science to broader frameworks. You know, it's really easy to look at morphology as just a strict, isolated natural science, but in higher education, it actually often serves as a powerful bridge. At institutions like UT Southern, the intricate, deeply scientific study of plant morphology and anatomy intentionally sits right alongside philosophical courses, such as Christian ethics. The whole idea is to build a truly holistic worldview. It's about pairing the rigorous observation of the natural world's design and survival mechanisms with moral philosophy, essentially bridging the gap between how the physical world operates and how we ethically interact within it.
So now that you have the vocabulary, the morphos and the logos, to decode the natural world, I have a challenge for you. Next time you step outside, don't just see a generic wall of green. Look closer at the plants around you. Actively look for those dentate margins, the imparipinnate leaflets, the protective calyx of a flower. Read the unique survival stories written right there in their shapes. What is the nature in your own backyard trying to tell you? Thanks so much for joining me on today's Explainer, and keep exploring.